If the press is awaiting a declaration of war before it imposes the self-discipline of combat conditions, then I can only say that no war ever posed a greater threat to our security. If you are awaiting a finding of clear and present danger, then I can only say that the danger has never been more clear and its presence has never been more imminent. It requires a change in outlook, a change in tactics, a change in missions by the government, by the people, by every businessman or labor leader, and by every newspaper. For we are opposed around the world by a monolithic and ruthless conspiracy that relies primarily on covert means for expanding its sphere of influence, on infiltration instead of invasion, on subversion instead of elections, on intimidation instead of free choice, on guerrillas by night instead of armies by day.
April 27, 1961. President John F. Kennedy warns of a hidden enemy, a monolithic and ruthless conspiracy operating in the shadows. 2 years later, he's dead, gunned down in Dallas. Was this the enemy he feared? Was this the conspiracy that took his life? November 22, 1963, Dallas, Texas. A shot echoes through Dealey Plaza, and the world stops. President John F. Kennedy is dead. The official story comes fast. Lee Harvey Oswald, a lone gunman, acted alone. But what if that story was written before the first bullet even left the chamber? What if the truth was buried under layers of lies planted by the very people sworn to protect us? To unravel the assassination of JFK, we must first step into the shadows of the CIA's operations, because the agency wasn't just watching that day in Dallas. They were shaping what came after. On March 18, 2025, the National Archives released thousands of previously withheld documents related to the JFK assassination, following President Trump's directive. These newly declassified files, totaling over 80,000 pages, offer fresh glimpses into the CIA's covert activities, surveillance operations, and the events leading up to that fateful day in Dallas. In this series, we're diving into these latest revelations, pulling back the curtain on secrets that have been buried for over 6 decades. Let's fast forward to 1967, to the humid streets of New Orleans. A district attorney named Jim Garrison starts asking questions, dangerous questions. He's digging into Oswald's past, his time in New Orleans, his connections to anti-Castro Cubans, his work with the Fair Play for Cuba Committee. Garrison finds threads that don't fit the lone gunman narrative. He uncovers links to local businessmen like Clay Shaw, to anti-Castro exiles training for covert ops, to shadowy figures who seem to know more than they're saying. Garrison believes Oswald was a patsy, a fall guy for something much bigger, a conspiracy that reached far beyond Dallas, and that belief puts a target on his back. The CIA wasn't about to let Garrison unravel their carefully crafted story. They had a weapon, a media asset codenamed Carbon 1, right there in New Orleans. Their mission was simple but sinister: plant stories, discredit Garrison, and bury his investigation under a flood of lies. Within weeks, headlines screamed that Garrison was a crackpot, a publicity hound, a man chasing ghosts. Articles painted him as unhinged, his probe as a wild goose chase. But Garrison didn't back down. He kept digging, kept pulling at those threads because he knew something the CIA didn't want anyone to know. A declassified CIA file reveals the lengths they went to. M-Carbon-1 wasn't just a journalist. They were a tool, a mouthpiece for the agency, feeding the public a narrative that protected the official story. But why? Why would the CIA care so much about a small-town DA if Oswald was just a lone nut? Why the panic? Why the rush to silence Garrison before he could even make his case? Think about it. The CIA wasn't just watching Oswald. They were controlling the story, shaping what the world believed about that day in Dallas. They had the power to make questions disappear, to make witnesses doubt their own memories, to make a man like Garrison look like a fool. But every lie they told, every story they planted, only made the shadows grow longer. What were they so afraid of? What did Garrison find that they didn't want us to see? 1967, New Orleans. Jim Garrison chases Oswald's ghost, and the CIA fights back. A media asset buries his probe under lies. Was Garrison too close to the truth? If the CIA had nothing to hide, why'd they go to war with Garrison? It started long before Dallas, long before the shots, the headlines, the cover-up. It started with a young man, a defector, and a journey that would set the stage for everything to come.